As Lucille keeps training with Broad, he would like to give him a day off. However, that sounds like a good deal, and even the first time Lucille hears that, he gets very excited. He recalls that he has never really gotten a day before, not in this life and never in his former life. Well, that is the life of a workaholic. Even now that he has gotten a day off, he doesn't know what to do with the day off that he has gotten. He doesn't have a hobby, nor does he have a life outside the training he does at the guild, so he doesn't know what to do. As though Braun could read minds, he asks if he would use his day off to work at the butcher house of the guild, and he accepts to do so. So, on his day off, he walks toward the butchery house. He is told the butchery house is just beside the dining room. He feels it's fair since he has never had close contact with monsters. He admits that instead of lying idle, it will be better for him to do something. At least he finds the door and eventually knocks at the door. A man comes to open the door, and he tells the man he is looking for the butchery house. The man tells him that he is in the right place and invites him inside the room. He introduces himself to him as Galba, and when Lucille looks at his face very well, he feels the man looks very familiar, but he really can't figure out where he knows him from. Galba tells him that he should relate to him the same way he connects with his brother. When Lucille looks at his face the second time, he sees that he looks like Golgar. He asks him if Golgar is the brother he refers to, and Galba tells him that Golgar is his kid brother. Lucille gets more comfortable, and he asks what could be done. Galba tells him that he heard from Broad that he is coming to spend the day off at his place, and Lucille also asks him how they work at the butchery house. Galba tells him to open the small box in front of him. Before opening the box, he assumes that something tiny will be inside of it since the package is small. But when he opens it, he gets terrified. He couldn't expect that a very big boar could enter into that bag, and he asks Galba how they were able to put the boar into the box. Galba tells him that the box is a magic box that could contain anything and conceal it. He tells Lucille that he has to proceed to butcher the boar and asks Lucille to watch so he can learn the skills and how it is done. He says that he first has to slit the boar's stomach and then bring out the inside of it. Lucille finds it very difficult to look at the scene, it makes him very uncomfortable, so he closes his eyes. By the time he opens his eyes, he sees that the meat is already chopped into small pieces and they look very small and neat. He says that it doesn't look very difficult and it isn't anything for him to be scared of. Galba tells him it isn't that simple, and it was only easy for him to do it that way because he has been working as a butcher for many years. Lucille asks Galba what they do with the butchered meat and if that is all they eat at the guild. Galba replies that they eat some of them at the guild and they also sell some to the other guilds and shops. They use the money to run the operational cost of the guild. He claims he believes the reason Broad had also sent him to the butchery house was to prepare him for the future. Lucille is glad to hear that Broad was thinking about him and his future when he sent him to the butchery house. But when he gives a second thought to the issue, he realizes it also means that Broad is trying to prep him for the time he would go to the forest and hunt as an adventurer. He gets very scared at that thought, and he tells his fear to Galba. Galba admits that he isn't wrong, and the reason Broad had sent him to the butchery house is so he can know more about monsters and also find out the weak points of every monster. So, when he is following adventurers to the battlefield as their healer, he can know how to confront monsters when he sees one. He continues and tells him that most of the new adventurers that they have been getting at the guild aren't interested in training or getting prepared for the task ahead. Instead, what they do is they forget ahead like heroes and go to the forest after taking guild, feeling like they are special. As a result, when they confront great monsters in the forest, they get killed due to their ignorance, and there is no opportunity for them to get healed, nor do they get a second chance. He admits that the presence of Lucille at the guild had given naive adventurers like that, who feel like they are special and enter the forest without any training, an opportunity to live again because formerly they don't get to learn about their mistakes before they die. He appreciates Lucille for what he does for them, but Lucille feels flattered and says it's nothing and is also just trying to live. The training continues, and Galba tells him that there are several kinds of monsters. He tells him to open the magic box, and he brings out a horned rabbit. He tells Lucille to butcher the horned rabbit, but Lucille can't find himself doing that comfortably. Although he admits that he loves meat, he never knows the cruel ways in which they are gotten. Galba encourages him to cut it and tells him to slit the stomach and put his hands inside it to bring out the insides. He reluctantly does it, although he feels filthy. When he finishes, he rests in the dining room and puts his head on the table. But Golgar comes to meet him and calls him out. He asks him how he felt spending his day at the butchery house, and he explains how he had spent his day. Golgar tells him that the first thing he needs to do is to take off the clothes on him. When he checks his clothes, he sees his clothes are filled with blood. He changes his clothes and goes to wash his hands. As he does so, he thinks about all the meats he has been eating without knowing how they have been prepared. Then, Vanilla comes by and calls for him. He turns to talk to her, and he sees her looking like a horned rabbit. He realizes he hasn't been able to take the picture off his head. She tells him she heard he spent his day at the butchery and asks how it went. He tells her that he didn't feel really good, but he is fine. But she tells him that she thinks he is overwhelmed. He asks her what she means, and she tells him that most new adventurers have felt very excited to hunt and take missions. They are also glad to work and they would kill monsters without hesitation, but when they are alone, they feel very overwhelmed. He asks her why she had come to him, and she explains that she and the other guild workers are very glad because of what he does for them, and they will do anything to help him. She asks to hold his hands so he can feel better, and he tells her to please keep his hands longer. After he feels a little better, he eats in the dining room. He is served a soup made with the horned rabbit he butchered earlier, and he starts eating. As he takes the first bite, Golgar calls his attention and gives him Substance X again. Although he dislikes it, he knows he can't reject it, so he drinks it regardless. Sometime later, he gets another day off, but this time he doesn't know what to do with the day. He thinks about his growth and how his magical skills are slowly increasing. He figures it is because he has passed level 1, and it is always very slow to proceed to level 2, just like the RPG games in the modern world. He wonders where Broad is, and as he walks, Natala and Melina come out from a corner, and Drakenvernel joins them too. They tell him he will spend the day with them, and they will teach him all the knowledge he needs. He is not much concerned about the knowledge they want to teach him. Instead, he is concerned about what the adventurers will say when they see 3 pretty ladies dragging him away. They drag him to the library and bring out several books. They tell him that Broad had asked them to teach him the knowledge of the outside world, and he should pick the book he wants. He decides to go for the book on healing skills, and after he makes his choice, the other 2 girls stand up and say they will leave him with Nanella. He wonders what is going on, and Natala explains that she was the one given the responsibility to teach him the books, but the girls only followed her because they wanted to see the kind of knowledge he would be interested in. And he didn't disappoint them because he picked a book that goes with his career. After the girls leave, Nanella starts with the book, and he asks her if it is fine for her to spend the entire day teaching him. She explains it is also part of her responsibility. She tells him they are in Maritoni in the country named Shirel, the only country where slave trade is abolished in their world. He is glad that he is in that state. She also tells him about the city named Yenis, where beast folks stay. 2 months later, the ranking of adventurers comes out, and Myrnal and Melina check it with him and rest on his body. He tells them to please give him a little space, but they claim it means getting to know each other. Nanella comes to join them, and they notice his clothes are no longer fitting. So Nanella takes him to shop for new clothes. On their way, he wonders why she didn't allow him to come by himself, and she tells him that the city is getting dangerous, and when she arrives, people take her around, so it is only fair she helps someone else. He shops with her, and they come out. He acknowledges that it is his first shopping in the new world. As they leave, he hears a loud noise and finds a lady named Monica who was attacked. She wakes up later, and he tells her he used healing magic to heal her, but it didn't work, so he had to use a cure. He feels she was poisoned. She tells him she thinks the perpetrator is a healer because 2 of her friends got healed and couldn't pay, so they were sold. She opposed it, so the healer was against her. She says the healer is named Bodickley, and he owns the biggest clinic in the city. He realizes that if he leaves her there or at the Healers Guild, she may not be safe, so he asks her if she would like to stay at the Adventurers Guild. She reminds him that adventurers and healers aren't friends, but he says he has been staying there, and they treat him right. He takes her there, and she comes to appreciate him. Looking pale, she asks him how much she will pay, but he tells her she doesn't need to pay him. Golgar also gives her food, and she is so glad. A month later, the criminal was eventually caught, but he had no ties with them. Instead of leaving the guild, Monica also asks to start staying and working with them. Sometimes later, Broad enters the guild in fear and calls for Lucille, telling him that some adventurers were attacked and needed to be healed. He follows him, and when he gets there, the adventurers are brutally injured and losing blood. When he heals the first person, he loses his magic and collapses, but Broad gives him a magic potion to increase his energy. He tries to heal most of them until he eventually collapses completely. When he wakes, he finds out there are casualties from the incident, and that makes him vow that he will grow more to save everyone. It's officially a year after he is reincarnated. He looks at his stats and can't even say if he has grown or not. He goes to Broad and tells him he wants to leave the guild. He says he isn't growing much, and he can't even land a punch on Broad. Broad tries to encourage him that he is doing good for his level, but when Broad finds out he is hellbent on leaving, he asks him what he wants to do after leaving. He says that he wants to earn money and start his healing office and heal people while collecting little pay. Broad wishes him well and tells him that his vision is just like the good person that he is. He walks out of the guild.